and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'll be using two of the newest dies that I just bought off of Sizzix. These were newly clearanced, and I've never seen these big dies this low in price before. So I'm using the Traveler's Notebook designed by Katelyn Lizardi, and one is to die cut the cover, and the other is to die cut pages and pockets to go inside. And what I'll be doing is actually I'm taking this spiral notebook that my mother-in-law, or maybe it was my sister-in-law who gave it to me, and it is a little bit of a thicker paper. It has a nice coating to it, but I really love pandas, and this is such a cute design that I wanted to make sure that this notebook would last, and I just didn't think that it would in its current condition. And so what I'll be doing is actually making a laminated traveler's notebook, and this way, once I finish using up all of the papers inside the traveler's notebook, I can just take out those signatures, swap in a new one, and continue to use this as a cover. So all I did there was I just trimmed my notebook cover to roughly the size that the traveler's notebook will die cut. It's not exact. I gave myself maybe half an inch to a quarter of an inch to half an inch, and I'm going to actually double this up by lining it on the inside with some colored cardstock. And so I'm just going to go with a contrasting color because I didn't quite have a shade of blue that would match perfectly the cover. And this is a little sneak peek of my little scrap paper binder, and I'll show you how I organize my paper scraps in a separate video. But what I'll go ahead and do is lay down a wide strip of double-sided adhesive so that I can go ahead and attach the solid color cardstock to our notebook cover that I'm upcycling. Ultimately, this is all going to get laminated, so these two pieces will be pretty well adhered together, so you may not necessarily need to go to this extreme with the double-sided adhesive, and you could get away with just gluing down the edges. But I just wanted to be cautious, especially since, as I mentioned, I really think this paper is super cute, so I'm trying to make it so that this journal cover will last. So I figure edge to edge adhesive is going to make it more durable. One of the things that I didn't take into consideration, what with how infrequently I laminate, I'm trying to change that and actually use my laminator more. But what I failed to realize is that as you laminate, more and more layers, the heat from the laminating machine may not be able to actually penetrate as well. And so at this point, what we're going to have is one layer of the upcycled journal cover, a layer of 65-pound colored cardstock, but in the center where the spine is, our two journal covers are going to overlap. So that center spine is going to end up being 4 layers of cardstock thick. And you'll see towards the end that my laminator had some trouble with that. So before we get there, though, here's what I like to do with my big dies. You see all this blue tape all around, and they're all marking certain things. The one thing to pay attention to, and I like to do this all the time with my big die, is I always cut with the pretty side face down. So I like to mark which way is going to be the front, which side's going to be the back, and which side is up. That way, when I go to place my papers down, whether it's mat board, pattern paper, anything, I'll know how to orient my papers. Now, in particular, this die will actually cut both the front and back cover and spine as one solid piece. However, I'm working from two separate pieces that I'll be joining together in the center where the spine will overlap. So having those markings for me on this die is important because I am die cutting two separate pieces. So I really do need to know which side is my front and which side is my back. And it just really speeds things up for me because then every time I go to die cut, I don't have to sit and figure it out every single time. And so I've found that this has been really helpful. And because where that black area is, that's just foam. So it's not going to do any harm or leave any impression, not that I've noticed anyways, in my paper or cardstock when I go to die cut. So I've found it useful to have those annotations. And so I'm going to run this through and then get my front and back covers. And it's especially important when you're using papers that do have a correct orientation. So the other thing that I like to do when I get a new die, especially these big dies, is I do like to just die cut it from just some plain 65-pound paper so that I can actually see what the die cuts. And it's helpful to have those pieces as templates so that I know what size I need to cut down my cardstock to if I'm using paper that I want to be really efficient with in terms of generating as little waste as possible. But it's also nice just to understand all the parts of the dies because on a big die, it can be a little bit harder to see because it's just all on that large steel rule platform. Now that I have my two pieces, what I'll do is go ahead and tape them together with the overlapped areas of the spine here. And this particular traveler's notebook has room for two signatures, and in the center there's a hole there so that you can actually thread a piece of elastic through to be a loop or that will serve as a closure for your notebook. And again, this is getting laminated, so the lamination will hold these two pieces together, but I figure it doesn't really hurt to have really nice, strong adhesive to hold them together as they go through the laminator. So I could have ended it there and continued to use that cover as is, but as I mentioned, if you do have pattern papers from things that you're trying to upcycle that you really want to kind of protect and make a little bit more durable, lamination is a really good option. And I have this piece of laminating pouch that is a little bit larger than what I need. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to trim it down, and you can do this. I don't know if it's necessarily recommended, but I do it all the time just so that I'm not laminating more than I need. And that little bit that's left over, I can definitely use that for another project, whether it's to make a bookmark or maybe even just laminating a die cut just so that it has that sort of nice glossy shine to it. So there's plenty of uses for it. If you don't want to cut down your laminating sheets, then you could run everything through the laminator, and whatever is excess, you can still keep and just use that as if you had like heavyweight acetate, because it is pretty thick at that point. I'm using 3mm laminating sheets, which I find works just fine for me. I've never tried the thicker stuff. And in terms of my laminating machine, this is one of the ones from Amazon. It's an older one. I think they have a newer model out now. But basically, it does have two settings. There's a 5mm setting and a 3mm setting, just depending on the thickness of the laminating sheet that you're using. I like to actually set my laminator on top of something so that it's not touching my desk. And that just helps protect my desk a little bit more because it does generate a lot of heat. Initially, when I run my cover piece through my laminator, I did put it between two pieces of copy paper to act as sort of a carrier because I didn't have this in its original full-size laminating sheet. So that just helps protect the machine. And one of the things that I started to notice was that I was getting a little bit of bubbling. It also wasn't melting and down completely and adhering to the cover. So that's why I had to run it through my laminating machine so many times, as you saw. And even towards the end, what I did was I switched it onto the 5mm setting so that it was a little bit hotter. And after the initial couple times through the laminating machine, I also took out the copy paper because everything's already melted at that point. The adhesive is melted, and so you don't have to worry about the adhesive sticking to the rollers of your laminating machine anymore. And then that allows the heat to more directly hit the laminating sheets. All of that helped to make the lamination a little bit better. However, with so many layers of cardstock, when I get to this part here where I'm folding on the score lines to define our spine, I did get some lift and bubbling. And you can see it already happening in the crease or the fold there. And so and some of the lamination started to come apart a little bit on the back cover. So that's just something to be cautious of. I think if I had just skipped the colored cardstock, then it would have been thin enough and wouldn't have been a problem at all. But in the end, it still looks nice, and the front actually looks really good. So I'm really happy with that. Now I'm going to cut down some just plain copy paper, and I'm going to use the Pages and Pockets die and cut my notebook inserts. So I just took plain copy paper, I stacked 5 sheets at a time and cut my paper in half, so I have 8.5 by 5.5. And this die will cut, you can make dashboards with some pockets, you can use it to make notebook inserts, and I'll be doing both, so you'll see both here. And I found that with my Cuttlebug, I do need a cardstock shim. So especially when using the scrapbook.com magic mat, which I love, by the way. So I'm really glad that they released these new sizes that work with the Cuttlebug because you can't buy cutting plates for the Cuttlebug anymore. So I figured these will last a good long time because they are self-healing. I'm going to make myself 2 journal signatures, and I don't know if I'll use both because the Traveler's Notebook cover does only have holes enough for 2 signatures, and I think I might use one of the signatures for a sort of folder dashboard, but I'm not sure. And in any case, I'll probably need a refill of my journal insert anyhow, so it doesn't hurt to go ahead and make that now. As I mentioned, I have these templates that I just die cut out of regular 65-pound paper, and as you saw, it's really convenient so that I can make sure that especially if I'm using scraps, that I have a large enough piece and I know how to orient things. That piece of scrap in particular has a tear in it, so it's nice to be able to use it on this project. And so I'll layer up a couple of just plain cardstock here because as it happens, I had a scrap of pattern paper that is exactly the right size. I mean, exactly the right size for that matches the page inserts, or in this case, I'll be using it as a dashboard. So that's this piece right here. So all I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and score that in half, and that's going to be my little dashboard. And because my pages do have rounded corners and there's a rounded corner in the center where the fold is, that does help the elastic band just kind of sit inside inside that fold a little bit better. So I went ahead and rounded the corners on my pattern paper as well, since I didn't actually use the die to cut that out. Now, I'm not too sure why they don't have the rounded corner on the pockets, but I went ahead and folded down the glue tabs and rounded that corner myself. If you do want pockets on both sides, the one drawback is that because it is a single die that cuts out a pocket, you're not going to be able to get the professional edge to show on the left-hand pocket. So that if you want a pocket on your left side, just know that you're going to have the kind of the raw edge of the backside showing, as opposed to that nice clean cut professional edge showing. And when I adhere pockets like this that have a hinge at the bottom, I do like to run a little bit of score tape, because that little bit of thickness from the tab can create a little bit of a catch point as you're slotting things into your pocket. And so that little bit of Scotch tape just helps things glide in a little bit more smoothly. Now, when it comes to stringing your traveler's journal, there's a lot of different ways to do this. I wasn't yet decided on whether I wanted white or black. I, in the end, thought I wanted the black, but then my black elastic band is rather thick. It's actually 2 millimeters thick, which I prefer because I like that it's a little bit chunkier. It seems like it's stronger, and it feels like it'll hold a lot of pages, like if you have a thick signature. However, what I decided was I didn't really want to use my white elastic. I really did want to use the black one. So I'm actually going to take my Crop-A-Dial, my Big Bite, and I'll just make the holes bigger. Now, you don't have a lot of space on the spine here, and to fit 2 1/8 inch holes makes it pretty tight. What I did when I punched my holes was I tried to, for each existing hole, I tried to expand it towards the cover, so that I'm trying to maintain the same amount of distance between the holes. That way you don't weaken the amount of cardstock that is between the holes by more than it already is. So with that little adjustment, I was able to easily string my black elastic band. Now, one thing to note is you can start and end your elastic wherever you like. I happen to prefer that when I tie off my elastic, it's on the last signature as opposed to the first signature. So I start from the inside wherever you want to end or tie off. And then I decided, just because I have my Crop-A-Dial out, I'll go ahead and put a little eyelet in as well. Why not, right? So if we're talking about durability, this will also make the journal cover more durable, because that center circle will be the housing for the elastic band that will keep the journal cover closed. So I just use my Crop-A-Dial. Actually, I put in a grommet because it does have the washer on the inside. So now I can just tie off my elastic here. You want it taut, but not so tight that it's going to start to bend or already put stress on your journal cover, because you do need this to stretch a little bit, and so you don't want to warp your journal in any way. So just have it, nice and taut, but not, too tight, such that it's bending your cover, but also not so loose that there's slack there. So I'm taking a little jump ring and I'm putting a little monkey charm. So pandas are my favorite animal, and monkeys are my next favorite. I couldn't find in my little collection of charms a panda charm, so the monkey charm is the next best thing. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is the loop that will be our closure. It's a little tight to get the two ends of the of the elastic through, but if you just use a pokey tool and a little tweezer, then you can definitely, it'll fit for sure. And same rule applies here. So you basically just want your elastic to comfortably cover your notebook without having to stretch it too much, especially since it's empty. If you wanted to fit this, you could put everything that you plan to put into your journal and then actually close it and see how much room you really need. Now, I bought this spool of black elastic that came with these little sort of ends that you can clasp onto your elastic. So there's half of it that can get clasped at the end here. You just use some pliers to really press that down. And I love using this now because before I used to just tie off in the center here. And using these little clips, I'll try to find it on Amazon and link to it in the description box below. But it just finishes off the journal a lot neater. There's less bulk in the center there. So if you already have like really chunky inserts, then you don't have to worry about that. And I think it just looks a little bit more professional. If I find a way to kind of tie off the signatures in a way that looks a little bit cleaner, then I'll definitely be exploring some ideas there. But that's basically my journal complete. So I've got a little dashboard folder with some pockets, and I've got a notebook insert. I didn't even have to like sew the notebook pages or staple them or anything. They'll stay in there really well with just the elastic holding them in. So here's a final look at my upcycled traveler's notebook. Trying to preserve the really cute notebook that I got as a gift and make it into something that will last. And as I fill up notebook pages, I can still use this journal cover and just swap out my pages for a fresh set of notebook inserts. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking, commenting, and sharing. If you want to catch new videos as I publish them, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Thanks so much, and until my next video, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye!